3-bet strategy by position. In online poker games, your pre-flop win rate is heavily tied to how well you 3-bet. Not how often you do it, but when, from which seat, and against which open. Position is the steering wheel. Who is left to act is the road conditions. If you treat 3 bets as only value hands and bluffs, you miss the bigger expected value engine. You are buying position, denying equity, and isolating weaker ranges before rake chews up your small edges. Context dictates strategy, and pre-flop is where you choose the context. Why position changes everything. A 3-bet is a bet with 2 goals: increase expected value with strong hands and force folds from hands that realize equity too easily. Position decides how often each goal is realistic. When you are in position, your bluffs realize more equity post-flop because you control pot size and capture more free cards. When you are out of position, you need more immediate fold equity, tighter structure, and cleaner blockers. Also, in online pools where players multi-table, people defend with pre-programmed ranges. That means your positional 3-bet frequencies can be built to attack those defaults and then nudged exploitatively when you see someone overfolding or overcalling. Build your 3-bet ranges in layers. I want you to think in 3 layers, not one big mixed blob. First, value core. Hands happy to stack off versus a 4-bet, or play a big pot like pocket queens and better, ace-king, and often ace-queen suited, depending on positions. Second, linear value. Hands that crush the opener but do not always love a 5-bet jam, like pocket jacks, pocket tens, ace-jack suited, king-queen suited, ace-queen offsuit in many matchups. Third, bluff and pressure. Hands chosen for blockers and playability like ace-5 suited, ace-4 suited, king-10 suited, queen-10 suited, jack-10 suited, and some suited connectors when conditions are right. Relative strength is everything. A hand is not a 3-bet in a vacuum. It is a 3-bet because it performs well versus that opening range with those players left to act. 3-betting by position, the practical playbook. Below is how I want you thinking, seat by seat. This is not a single static chart. It is the logic that builds a chart you can actually execute while 4-tabling. Under the gun in MP, tight, credible, low noise. When you open under the gun or MP, you should expect more respect and fewer light 3-bets. When you face an under the gun open, your 3-bet range should be narrower and more value dense because under the gun starts with fewer dominated hands. First, versus under the gun open, prioritize pocket queens and better, ace-king for pure value. Add some ace-queen suited and pocket jacks depending on rake and how sticky the opener is. Second, bluffs are mostly blocker-driven, like ace-5 suited and ace-4 suited. You want hands that reduce the chance villain has pocket aces and ace-king, and that can barrel on low boards. Third, avoid hope poker. Hands like small pairs that you only want to set mine perform poorly versus strong ranges and high rake. If you 3-bet them, do it with a clear plan, not a prayer. The mistake here is ego 3-betting. You are not trying to show aggression. You are selecting hands that retain expected value when villain continues. Cutoff and button, wide pressure, high realization. In late position, you can 3-bet wider because you realize equity better and you punish opens that are naturally wider. Most online players open too wide in cutoff and button, then defend too passively versus 3-bets. That is free money if you apply pressure correctly. First, cutoff versus MP, you can run a more linear range, adding hands like ace-jack offsuit, king-queen offsuit, king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, and suited broadways that dominate continues. Second, button versus cutoff widen further and include more suited connectors and suited 1-gappers like 7-6 suited, 8-7 suited, 9-8 suited, 10-9 suited, plus blocker hands like ace-5 suited. Third, plan for the blinds. Who is left to act matters. If the blinds are aggressive 4-betters, tighten your bluff in. If the blinds are nits who overfold, you can 3-bet more and print. Late position 3-betting is where you build your red line in online games, but only if your sizes and post-flop plans match your range. Small blind, polar, and disciplined. The small blind is the hardest seat in poker. You are out of position for the rest of the hand, and rake punishes marginal calls. So your default should be 3-bet or fold far more than call. From the small blind versus a button open, a strong default is a polar strategy. Value hands that can stack off, plus bluffs with blockers and good playability. Calling a bunch of medium-strength junk is lighting expected value on fire. First, value. Pocket queens, and better, ace-king, plus expanding to pocket jacks, pocket tens, ace-queen suited, ace-jack suited versus wide steals. Second, bluffs. Ace-5 suited to ace. 2 suited, king-10 suited, queen-10 suited, and some suited connectors when button overfolds to 3 bets. Third, trap to avoid. Small blind flatting hands like king-jack offsuit and queen-10 offsuit versus a button open. You lose initiative and you play dominated ranges out of position. Discipline in the small blind is an edge multiplier because most people bleed chips there without noticing. Big blind, mix more, defend smart. The big blind gets the best price so you can defend a lot. That also means your 3-bet range can be slightly more selective than small blind because calling is not automatically a mistake. Still, versus late position opens, you should 3-bet enough to prevent them from printing with auto steals. Your big blind 3-bets should hit 2 categories. Hands that dominate their continues and hands that block their best continues. First, versus button open. 3-bet more linearly with hands like ace-jack offsuit, king-queen offsuit, king-jack suited, queen-jack suited, and good suited aces. Second, add bluffs with blockers and playability like ace-5 suited, king-9 suited, queen-9 suited, jack-9 suited, and some suited connectors depending on sizing and tendencies. Third, do not over 3-bet trash. You still play the pot out of position, and online regulars will defend correctly if you go crazy. Sizing by position, use the geometry. In most online sites, standard sizings keep your strategy simple and protect your expected value against rake. In position versus an open, a common baseline is around 3x. Out of position, you typically go bigger, often 4x to 5x, because you need more fold equity and you want to reduce villain's positional advantage. Adjustments are allowed, but they must be logical. If villain is a calling station, size up with value and cut the weakest bluffs. If villain overfolds, keep the sizing that maximizes fold frequency without bloating bluffs into spew. What changes when players left to act are strong? Here's the part most players ignore. You are not only battling the opener, you are battling the lineup. If you are in the cutoff and there is a tough 4-better on the button, you're light. 3 bets collapse in expected value because your squeeze protection disappears. If the blinds are passive, your 3-bet in the cutoff prints more because you isolate the opener more often. Always ask, who can punish me and who will donate? Then set your frequency. Hand scenario, the squeeze that prints. Game, 100 big blinds online, cash, 6 max. You are in the small blind with 8 of spades, 7 of spades. Cutoff opens to 2.3 big blinds, button calls. Big blind is a tighter regular. Your action, you 3 bet to 11.5 big blinds. Cutoff folds, button calls. Flop, king of clubs, 6 of diamonds, 2 of spades. Pot is about 25 big blinds. Line, you c-bet small, around 6 big blinds. This board favors the 3-betters range because you have more strong king X and overpairs, plus you have backdoor equity. Button folds a chunk of the floats that called pre-flop but cannot continue versus a range advantage, especially in rake environments where thin calls are punished. Coaching note: the expected value comes from denying equity to button's wide flatting range and taking initiative in a spot where calling in the small blind would be passive and dominated. You are not gambling with suited connectors. You are applying pressure where your position disadvantage is compensated by fold equity and range strength. Common leaks I want you to fix. First, 3-betting the same frequency from every seat. Your in-position range should be wider, your out-of-position range should be tighter or more polar. Second, flat calling too much from small blind. Most of those calls are negative expected value, especially when multi-tabling and not realizing equity perfectly. Third, bluffing with no structure. Choose bluffs for blockers, playability, and board coverage, not because it looks suited. Fourth, forgetting rake. Small edges shrink online, push more. Expected value into pre-flop aggression and cleaner post-flop spots. Key takeaway. Your 3-bet strategy is position first, hand second. In position, you can apply wider, more linear pressure because you realize equity better. Out of position, especially from the small blind, you should be more 3-bet or fold, using a disciplined value core and structured bluffs with blockers. Always account for who is left to act, and remember that online rake makes passive, hope lines bleed expected value. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. What are the 2 main goals of a 3-bet described in the article? Answer. Increase expected value with strong hands and force folds from hands that realize equity too easily. Explanation. The article frames 3-betting as both value-driven and denial-driven, and position determines how often each goal is realistic. Question 2. What are the 3 layers the article recommends for building 3-bet ranges? Answer. Value core, linear value, and bluff pressure. Explanation. The strategy is to separate hands by how they perform versus continues. Stack off value, strong but not jam-happy hands, and structured bluffs. Question 3. Versus an under-the-gun open. What does the article say your 3-bet range should generally look like? Answer. Narrower and more value-dense, with bluffs mostly blocker-driven. Explanation. Under the gun starts with fewer dominated hands, so the article recommends prioritizing strong value and using blocker bluffs like suited wheel aces. Question 4. What is the small blind default the article recommends more often than calling, and why? Answer. 3-bet or fold, because you are out of position and rake punishes marginal calls. Explanation. The article calls small blind the hardest seat and emphasizes disciplined aggression over flatting dominated low expected value holdings. Question 5. What baseline 3-bet sizing does the article suggest in position versus out of position? Answer. Around 3x in position and often 4x to 5x out of position. Explanation. The article recommends going bigger out of position to gain fold equity and reduce the opponent's positional advantage. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.